Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Facebook page for episode 253. It still blows me away every time I see we've gone past 250 episodes, entitled Living Freemasonry, or on the YouTube chat running alongside this video. Good evening and hello to all those watching us live. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up for introductions, we have, as always, Mike the Intern.
Hey, Mike the Intern here. Mike Hambrecht of Triandria Lodge number 780 in Rock Creek, Ohio. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, good evening. Next up, the Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from sunny Kissimmee, Florida, and Orange Blossom Lodge number 80, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast. Good evening, brothers.
Good evening, good evening. And not quite the full house tonight. We have ending last but not least, the very own Jason Richards.
No one's ever least, John. We're all on the level. We just have a bunch of different levels.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah. Jason Richards, past master, Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C.
Very cool. Thanks for joining us. RJ is doing his fatherly duties tonight. He says, he's on daddy duty, so that's important, and we wish him well. So hopefully not, yes. Well, before we get into tonight's episode, I want to also give a shout out and thank you to all of the patrons supporting the show. We've got quite a bunch of knights, squires, and pages supporting all the activities that we do, and it helps keep the show going. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This week's episode is entitled Living Freemasonry. And Jason, tell us how this topic came up in conversation.
So I was like, hey guys, we got a show. What's the topic going to be? And everybody was like, I don't know.
And there's the secret sauce.
No. I'm kidding. We did a little bit of introspection when we were thinking up show topics, to just say, what are some of the things we've noticed in our Masonic lives and our Masonic journeys. And one of the things that we've noticed is there are some brethren who really live their Masonic tenets, their Masonic ideals, and their Masonic obligations for the 2 hours that they're in lodge, a month. And when they pass through those doors, whether it be, on social media or elsewhere out in public, etc., we've noticed some brothers tend to forget those obligations. But then we realize there are a whole bunch of brethren who just live their obligations and live Freemasonry every single day and every part of their day. And what we wanted to do was highlight some best practices for how you and how we can really inculcate these tenets and these ideals and these aspirations that Freemasonry hits us with in the degrees on a 24/7 type of basis. So that's really how the conversation got started, and we really wanted to carry this conversation out to the listeners and the viewers because we thought it would be something that we could all challenge ourselves to do better on.
It's interesting. I was trying to consider all the different angles that you could take with this. One is kind of like what you see in a lot of active discussions in Freemasonic groups like Facebook groups and the like, about the people living their obligations, right? Of adhering to the things that we took an obligation to do. And whether that could be literal, whether that could be figurative, or whether that could just be under the spirit of Freemasonry.
Their oaths.
Remember your oaths, right? So there's that part. And then there's just the general system of morality writ large that we have in Freemasonry. So maybe not just the word for word part of what we're obligated to, but all entitling all of the methods and processes and philosophy and doctrine that we are inculcated with that is writ large supposed to be a system that's supposed to help us, by our definition, take good men and make them better. So if that is what we're here to do, and if that is part of the transformative process, how are we better outside the lodge? How are we transformed into that? And then the last conversation starter that I've been thinking about too for this is, how is this unlike, and I'm going to use kind of a provocative term, how is this unlike Sunday Christians, right? Where people just, they put on their Sunday best and they forget about it during the rest of the week, right? Same kind of thing goes for lodge. We are not a religion. We are not a religion. But yes, Juan, I didn't know if you knew that. I'll send you the memo. We're not a religion, but we do have a lot of moral philosophy that's instructed. And so we're not trying to say that you need to live some sort of under some religious dogma after you become a Freemason, but there are codes of conduct, as it were, that we should hold ourselves to. So with that, I'm going to open it up to Juan, because Juan is very passionate about this concept of applied Freemasonry, and tell me how applied Freemasonry is the same as or different than living Freemasonry, and what that means to take it outside of the lodge room.
No, that's great. One of the things that I like to talk about is that, what gets measured gets changed. If you have a good idea of what you do in a day, and I've been having this conversation with my wife recently, I have a lot of moving parts in my business, and I'm always busy, but it's important that I am purposeful in that movement. Now, that same idea happens in my Masonic implementation of light. For me to be able to live Masonry, I need to get a level base observation of, like, how am I doing with this part of Freemasonry? And of course, you can go as basic as, trying to measure your time, which is one of the fundamental lessons of our craft, all the way up to some of the esoteric components, and how to perhaps search for light in other disciplines and other traditions. So I personally feel that living Freemasonry requires that initial baseline. Where am I, and like, what are the lessons of Masonry that I need to implement? And some people act at times as, once you're a master Mason, like you're done, like you've done it. It's only the beginning of your journey. It takes men a lifetime for them to improve upon their virtues and reduce or eliminate their vices and superfluities. So living Freemasonry, it's a constant progression. It's a steadfast progression, a determined single focus in becoming a better man.
So what does it look like on the opposite side when what characteristics do you see of men who don't live Freemasonry?
I would say that they perhaps are not aware or mindful of the areas of their respective lives that could improve. And I'm sure this happens to most of you. You go through your day and you go through the motions. Like, you do the same thing. You wake up, you're rushing the family, to get dressed. Everyone gets in the car, goes to work, goes to school. And like, you get in this train of doing the same thing over and over again. And you might suffer through it all. Yeah, it might be super stressful mornings. It might be very, difficult afternoons and frustrating evenings. And you could go for weeks, months, and years that way. And I've seen individuals that are stuck in a rut and they are living life in that manner. And they could be implementing some of the lessons of Masonry that will help them alleviate some of this suffering. If you think about it, the majority of suffering in humanity is unnecessary. Even when the anticipation of suffering is suffering on its own, and it serves. Huh?
That's funny, because just today I was reading a good quote that says, "Anxiety is worrying twice."
Mm-hmm.
You're worrying about something, and then if it happens, then you worry about it then. So in fact, you're worrying up to twice.
That's true. And I've heard, if I'm not mistaken, the Dalai Lama says, when you're worried, if there is something that you can do it. If there is nothing that you can do, stop worrying. There's nothing you can do about it. Like it's dual. There are just two things. And, granted, in human evolution, worry plays a role. It is an important thing that excites you, motivates you, puts you in, gets you ready for the fight. I understand that. We were not living in the same times that our biological responses were developed. We don't have to worry about your 1,000 emails sitting in your inbox.
Yeah. Gary V kind of puts it, where back in the day you had to worry about, the saber-toothed tiger coming to eat you, from around the corner. So you had to always be a little bit on edge. But now it's, there's Karen down the hall in HR, right? Come on, Karen.
Could be worse.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
My name is Cheryl, not Carol.
Brother
Jared Stanley.
Yeah, I was gonna say Stanley. Doesn't sound right. Yeah, Stanley's the last name. Jared Stanley. Thank you so much for giving us what is it called? A Powerball.
Super chat.
That's
super chat. Yep.
Super chat.
Thanks.
Chatty. And go check out his YouTube channel. What is a Mason?
Yeah.
He's got some great lapel pins too, by the way.
Yes.
Edgar from Masonic Revival worked with him on those. Yeah.
Boom.
Fancy.
Love it.
Beautiful.
Mint in package.
Yep.
It's mint in box.
That's right.
Did you say smib in box?
That's it.
So casually?
No casual smibbing here.
Hashtag casual.
Perhaps at Masonicon, if you come by our table.
Maybe. Yes.
Okay, so Hammy, how are you living Freemasonry?
Oh, barely.
That's okay.
But that's the key. I mean, it's, every day you try to improve that. Some of the things I try to make sure to do is I try to, check on brothers I know that may not be feeling well, may not have been to lodge the last meeting, I do that, plus I actually go to another lodge. Now these are, just other things. Plus, I have some good brothers up here that I know are really living life as a Mason. One goes out and mows other brothers' lawns that can't. They're incapable of going out and doing it themselves. And he takes care of that. He also has been known to go to the nursing homes to check on the shut-ins, the ones that just can't come back out to Masonry. And, it's that kind of stuff too. But then there's another brother I know who has he is one of our other brothers does not have family locally anymore, and he brings him over to his house every year for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Has made him part of his direct family, and so to take care of him. I wish that, and I'm learning from those things, that's more what's happening with me on how I am living life as a Mason. The very fact that I drive around with square and compasses on my car, they'll make sure that I don't, as I'm driving down the road at the guy who just cut me off, I'm not flipping him the bird. Because, I use those things to remind myself that I need to live this life better and stop, thinking things like that and doing things so I don't, other things like that. But yeah.
Yeah. Another good example, B Strut in the YouTube chat also mentioned with part of a super chat, thank you, is that Masonry, summed up, Masonry is keeping your word. Plain and simple. Integrity.
Wow. It just depends on the words you're actually keeping.
Yes.
Or does it? Or does it?
4-letter words, 5-letter words, this kind of things. Yeah. But actually, I've seen some of those, even like some of the modern Grand Lodge videos for recruiting for Masonry. They talk about, Masonry is what it used to be when a men's word was his agreement, right? It was his pact. that there wasn't this, well, I don't trust you, I got to get everything in writing, where you could get a handshake and say, trust me,
his word is his bond.
His word is his bond. Absolutely. And that's a really good summary of what does it mean like to live Freemasonry outside the lodge, right? Jason, what do you think?
Oh man, living Freemasonry outside the lodge. I think you guys have brought some really good points up. One of the things that I think we're taught in Freemasonry that doesn't necessarily always translate to real life is that quest for knowledge and that thirst for truth and knowledge. So it's no surprise that you have references to the classical Greek education system in Freemasonry. You have the search for more light, for more truth. No, that's not the Luciferian doctrine. It's Freemasonry is predicated on a deeply personal journey for truth, if you can find it. And oftentimes, even I get so caught up in the minutia of day-to-day life that I just don't take the time to tend to my spiritual health, to my personal spiritual reflective meditational journey, or take the time to learn something new because I'm just genuinely interested in how God's world works. It's something that I have to keep reminding myself to take time out of the day to just sit and do a little bit of reflective introspection. And so for me, living Freemasonry is just as much never losing that sense of wonder and that curiosity about God and about the world, as it is living your obligations, being a good person, and trying to make yourself a better person. Because ultimately, that spiritual introspection is one of the foundational aspects of who you are as a person. And I think with more spiritual introspection, you can become and often do become a better version of yourself.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's how I interpret it about living Freemasonry, is that I'm a firm believer that Freemasonry is a syncretic philosophy, a true system of morality, and that it has moral philosophical nuggets of information that you need to just reflect upon to become a better person. And so it's not again, it's not a religious dogma, but it is food for thought, right? It's a good moral structure for food for thought that you should be taking outside and thinking, well, how am I applying this, right? At the literal level, how am I applying these working tools in my day-to-day life? But also, where do these things come from? And I would, one of these days I'm going to try and put together like a whole system of like what's behind the scenes, like the backstory behind a lot of the things that often get overlooked in our degree system. So they allude to some spiritual truths. They allude to some different systems of thought, some mystery schools that are not exoteric, as you would say. They are more esoteric. So there's that layer of, if you really truly believe that there's an esoteric side of Freemasonry, which I do, then you should be living the search for truth forever, right? We're never going to have the perfect Ashler. We're always going to be, smoothing it and working off all of our rough edges. But there is a quest for trying to be as perfect as we humanly can be. Now, if you don't believe in any of that, which there are many brothers who join just for the fraternal social club, want to get out of the house, have a dinner, all that good stuff. Can someone who believes in just exoteric Freemasonry be living Freemasonry every day? Absolutely.
Sure.
Right. Because we're here to take care of our brothers. We're here to take care of our widows and orphans. We're here to be good, upstanding citizens and members in our community. All of those things we should be doing every single day. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, you can take the same obligation and look at it from a completely spiritual sense or a completely charitable sense. It means both, very much so. In addition, I would say if you're only looking at it in a spiritual sense or only looking at it in a charitable, good citizen type of sense, you're missing a lot.
Now, I've got one for you, though. How about this? How about a brother who never comes to lodge, ever? Okay. Is he still living a life as a Mason?
If you're paying dues, that's all that matters.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that too. He is doing that. He keeps that up, but he never comes to lodge. Is he still a brother Mason? Yes, he is. And if we don't see him doing it, is it possible that he is actually living life as a Mason, though? Maybe better than some of us who are attending lodge on a regular basis.
I've heard an anecdote of a brother who joined but wasn't very active, and it's because he never got into it or never really had the time to commit to it. But this member, fuzzy story, but he joined, and just the mere fact that he was a Mason, just that earning that title, gave him a sense of purpose that he was able to carry with him. Right. So because he's not active, because he's not on the degree teams, because he's not, washing dishes, he was proud to be living Freemasonry. He was proud to have that title as a Mason. And so again, that is something that's admirable.
And so very likely he was out there living and doing exactly what he learned, being charitable to his brothers and neighbors, even just brothers. I mean that in general terms in this case, being circumscribing his passions, things like that, everything, probably just, doing every little step.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the lessons in Masonry, at least on the surface level, aren't difficult to understand. I think they're hard as hell to inculcate, though, on a daily basis. Masonry really challenges you to be the very best person you can be, and it's so difficult to get up day after day and constantly make that choice to be that very, very best man.
Yeah. And the architectural, or builders allegory works perfectly for what we do. Like, you are supposed to build a foundation that is strong enough for you to build upon. If you neglect the quality of that foundation, and let's say you move up super quick, you go through a 1-day class, and then you just join like a lightning round of York Rite and Scottish Rite, and just keep on pushing through and get involved in office, and like, you might be neglecting some of the foundational elements that are what could make you become that perfect edifice. And I always harken back to these because we just don't dominate them. Like, keeping your passions within due bound is very difficult. It's tried every day, God knows, and my brothers of the Masonic Roundtable know this clearly. In keeping your passions within the bounds, it takes a conscious effort. It takes you recognizing, and I'll give you a personal example, because I want you to have something concrete to go by. When we get upset, like when I get upset, I don't want any kind of correction. I don't want you to tell me what the ideal thing I need to do is. I know what I need to do.
Anyone who's ever been told to calm down has never calmed down in the history of the world.
That's true. So like yesterday, my kiddos were having difficulty going to bed. Like, they were trying to hang on to the day and like stretching it for us. I had a ton of stuff to do, and like my mind was not in them. I wasn't present. I wasn't like really enjoying the moment. I just wanted to be done with dealing with the kids so I could go and do the other things that were preoccupying me. And they asked me for something. They asked me to, tell them a story or something like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell you a story at 9:40 at night when you're already past your budget. You go to sleep. But I wasn't kind with my words. I wasn't patient. I wasn't loving. I was just cutting. And my wife, kind of waved me over, and she's like, babe, I understand, but you weren't kind. Like, it didn't sound And I'm like, I know, but I'm frustrated because like I keep on hanging on and I want them to go to bed and I want to do this thing. Blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, I just want you to know you weren't kind in the way that you expressed it. And I could have just like come into my studio and like, but she was right. I was able to, in a split second, realize it and go and speak with the boys and tell them, guys, listen, you need to go to sleep at a specific time so that you can wake up with energy. There's this whole thing about 8 hours of sleep or something like that. You should adhere to that. They should get 10. But anyway, but after that, all that thing happened, I realized that my circumscribing my passions depended on a lot of different moving factors. They depended on the fact that I was taking care of myself first. If I was with lack of sleep or hungry or whatever, it would have been much more difficult. But I've been keeping better control on all of those things. That comes from, keeping my passions within due bounds, removing the superfluities, and having that presence of mind. Like you cannot be a better man if you are just going through life at 100 miles per hour and not paying attention to what you're doing, and mindfulness will save your freaking life, I think.
I agree. If you're mindful and you make sure that like whenever you're in a conversation with someone, be present. And listen. And we're all guilty of this in a lot of ways. We listen to respond more than we listen to hear what they've said. And I'm exceptionally guilty of that. I mean, I will sit there and watch. Be sitting in a conversation with somebody at work, and I'm like listening so that I'm ready for my response. And half the time later on, I'll be like, what did I just talk to them about? Because I really wasn't as mindful in the conversation as I should have been, because again, I was listening to give them a response to what they were saying to me, and
that's a good point, Mike, whatever you said. That's a good point.
yeah, whatever. By the way, 12 Rules to Live by Jordan Peterson. If you haven't read that book, it's long as all get out. But if you can pay attention to it, you'll get a lot, specifically from that. The whole flow of having a conversation with an individual. And it's such a bad habit that people have where they're crafting their response. We all do it. Like we all are looking for the, how do I come back? But when you really pay attention to what people are saying and you ask questions and you delve deeper, like sometimes you are a better conversationalist without speaking as much. You're there for the people.
Right. It's one thing. Go ahead.
One of the things I try to be cognizant about, especially at work, are actually we've touched on it. It's called the 5 levels of listening, and so it goes from ignoring to pretend listening to which is you're on the phone with your parent or someone else. You're not invested in the conversation. You're just going yeah, right. You're just throwing in a syllable every now and then so that they don't call you out that you're not listening.
Oh yeah, dear, you're right.
Yep. Then there's the selective listening, which again is tuning into certain parts of the conversation but tuning out. And then what Mike described was the 4th level of listening, which was attentive listening. And so that's where you're listening to everything, but you're listening to everything and so that you can formulate your response and be ready to jump out with your response as soon as they take a breath. And those 4 levels of listening are actually within your own frame of reference. But there's a 5th level of listening. Some people call it global listening. Some people call it empathic listening. But that's where you're listening to another person, but you're really trying to understand it from their viewpoint and see yourself in their shoes as they're talking. And it's really listening to figure out what you can know about a certain person just from the stances they take or what they talk about. So if John is busy talking about all of the stuff that his kids are doing, I can infer from that with empathic listening that this is John's a family man. The family is really, really important to him. It takes up a lot of his time, takes up his worldview. And so I try to practice empathic listening whenever I can.
And that's what I love about you.
Chicks dig it.
So
I'm not going to talk about the selective listening I do with my wife.
Yes. And also at work. What?
I like that.
So I'm going to go back to a primer that we started about in the beginning of the episode, which is we've established the fact that you don't need to go to lodge all the time, or sometimes, if ever, to truly live Freemasonry. However, is it possible that going to lodge or engaging with your brothers or having fraternal discourse, is that a way of helping to prime the pump so that you can be held accountable and get reintroduced or reinvigorated in what living Freemasonry is? So just the again, just like the Sunday Christians versus those who kind of live it all through the rest of the week, is there benefit in, if not going to lodge, how about just hanging out with other brothers and reminding each other of their errors and kind of aiding in some sort of reformation?
Well, I think accountability partners are always a good thing. It's you very much get energy from other people, especially if you're an extrovert like me and John. But if you aren't spending a lot of time with brethren, you might not have those Masonic ideals reinforced, at least at a subconscious level, nearly as often as you would if you were hanging out with brethren. So even spending time with like-minded individuals and brethren can subconsciously reinforce those Masonic tenets and can help reinvigorate you with the energy that you get from your brethren, but also reinculcate those tenets in your life. So I think hanging out with brethren is a very important part of the Masonic experience. But at the same time, it's possible to live Freemasonry and live out your obligations on your own. It's just harder.
I have a challenge for the brothers listening and watching. Here's my challenge to you. If this is not already happening, put lodge night in your calendar. Make your family and friends aware of the fact that you're going to lodge, if possible. If this is something that you can fit within your work day and your responsibilities. If not, there might be a lodge that you can escape to every other month or something like that. If you have influence in your lodge, try your very best to encourage a Masonic discussion or presentation or a small component of rich Masonic education to take part within the meeting. And then when the meeting is over, if you can, without getting in trouble with your, with work or with your responsibilities, hang out in lodge and try to talk about Masonry. Don't be talking about traffic and politics and you're here congregated in a place of like-minded men who also have a desire to become better men. Capitalize on that. You wouldn't go to a small business administration meeting and then start talking about your collection of, Teletubbies. No. Hashtag Teletubbies for Masonry. If you identified with that. But it's how many times I've sat in lodge, and I understand small talk. Most people they go into how did you get here? You're from there. How the heck do you come? Have you seen this construction? It's spend time in lodge speaking about Masonry and come home feeling damn, that was a good time. I came out of there with value. I did this the other night with two brothers, Brother Marlon and Brother Manny. Everyone went home and we turned off the lights, closed the lodge, and we stepped on the outside. We didn't go anywhere. We just stayed there and started talking about Masonry, like living Masonry. And we probably spent there maybe 40 minutes to an hour. We got more out of that little bit of time right there outside of lodge than we did at the opening, during the meeting. And, you know, hopefully my brothers don't get offended by that, but it's the reality.
Well, and so another thing to add to that too is, even when you go to lodge, even if there's not a program that's scheduled, right, there are things that you can observe, right? You can be mindful in the moment and kind of observe the opening, the closing. You can do all sorts of things to, as we've mentioned in earlier episodes about finding the value of Freemasonry. What's the value proposition, and how is it worth the opportunity cost of you doing something else, spending time with your family, binging Netflix? We've talked about all that. So when you're there, make it worth it, right? And be an active observer and try to find something that you are going to say, you know, I'm actually going to actively listen to the open, and I'm going to really pay attention to what they're saying, and I'm going to see if there's any insight I can glean from that. It's that simple. And we take some of this ritual for granted because we hear it over and over and over again. And if you stop and listen and just calm your mind, pay attention, you're going to walk away with something that you may not have observed before, even though you've heard it hundreds, maybe thousands of times. And so it's up to you to glean that nugget, to get that value out of that meeting. There's a lot of people that hate the cliche of Freemasonry, which is you get out of it what you put into it. But that's what my petition signer told me, and I find it to be true, because it is whatever the personal intention is, you'll get that back.
Yeah. You know, something came to mind for those brothers who are out there in business, they have their own businesses or they're salespeople and they go to networking meetings. Like, if you really pay attention to the actual art form of networking, you're told to work the room. Like, you're supposed to go to a conference and not just hang out with the people you know, or just stay sitting in your booth or whatever. If you're a good networker, you go out there and you start connecting people and you start learning from people. I have a brother here, I'll keep him anonymous, who is a master at this. I met him on a business conference, didn't know he was a Mason, was in touch with him for a couple of years. And then one day we went on a trip together we went to the Capitol for an art exhibition, maybe 7 years ago. And come to find out, he was a Mason. And like, we were talking about all these different things, but this brother, like, when I met him, he would go in through the conference room and he would talk to people and like ask them questions, figure out what they were about, what their goals were, eventually meet someone else who had similar needs, who was a compatible person. He'll bring them together. Like, no benefit to him. He just was the person to introduce them. Imagine the value if you were to apply a similar technique in lodge, especially when you go to a brand new lodge and you go in there and you start saying hello to people. Oh, you get to know people. Even in your lodge, you could be the person that takes that petitioner who is just coming to get a feel for the lodge, but you're the one that is actually there, pays attention to what's important to him, and connects him with the brother that is going to give him the best advice on how to continue pursuing a membership in the lodge. Like, it would change the game for you. It would change the whole experience, and more brothers will get to know you. You'll get to really experience get to learn from other brothers who have something to teach you, and you don't waste your time. You go into lodge and you're talking to a lot of people, building relationships, getting to know people. You know this. If you've seen me, when I'm out and about, I don't hang out with just one person. I go and I talk to a lot of people and I try to memorize their names.
Yeah, that's something that's real hard for me, because that's one, and I try, because it's way outside my comfort zone to actually initiate, contact. I mean, if I know the brother, it's easy. That's, but that's, because I do know the person.
Yeah.
But walking up to that new guy that I don't know, and that's something I've been working hard at learning, because what else did I join this for? except for to also meet new brothers and new friends and new, relationships.
Yeah.
So I fight that very hard, and actually the worst part is if I'm introduced to people rather than go up and meet them myself, a lot of times I won't remember that brother's name the next week if I'm introduced. If I go up and do it myself, I remember, because it gives me a key to remember. It's usually the introduction, for whatever reason, doesn't stick. It doesn't. It's not true in this case, but it doesn't feel important enough. Does that sound?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
No, but that's good that you realize that.
Yeah,
because that helps you.
And that's just because it's my level of comfort, for that.
Yeah, and a brother like you would benefit from another brother taking the baton and being the one that actually says, "Hey, brother Mike, you gotta come here. This other brother watches Perry Mason. You're not gonna believe it. And like, you love Perry Mason? Oh my God, these two guys love it." But we start talking. Before you know it, brand new friend.
That's right. Yep.
That's how you live Masonry.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So this question is going to start with Mike, but it kind of apply to the rest of you. How can you spot someone who's living Freemasonry? What characteristics would you see in a brother that you're like, that guy, I can tell he's living Freemasonry because
he has all those decals on the back of his car.
Look at
no,
the
man.
lapel pins he has.
That's where I was going. It's the lapel pins, man.
Okay, assuming all those are true.
That's right.
What else? Mike,
it's not easy, because one of the things is, there's features you'll know. There are things you're going to know. If people generally, and I know it sounds a little crazy when I say this, flock to him, and can't say enough good about that person, then you know that they've been doing right. On top of that, though, a Mason who is really living the life as a Mason will almost always appear, he's going to be that guy who never looks like he's ever been in an argument with anyone. And anytime you've ever seen him, even if there's been a stressful moment, he's not arguing, yelling in lodge. He's not that guy. Or you don't see him on the street corner yelling at somebody else. He's just talking, and he keeps it in check. He's also the same guy that you'll see, if you're watching carefully, you'll see him walk up to the homeless guy who's sitting there, with his coffee cup off to the side and toss the money in, even if he doesn't know for sure that man needs it. He's just going to do it. He's also going to be the guy who may even, you'll see him, if you're lucky, you'll see him take a load of clothes to Salvation Army, the Goodwill, or even to some of the local centers like where I work. It's a mental health center, and we have an employment center. Some of the, we take donations for clothes there. So because some people need them for their future for job hunting. But you have to be looking for it. You have to actually go out there and watch, because if we're doing it right, nobody knows we did it. If we're actually living Masonry right, and on the charitable side, that is, nobody's going to see us do it. And if we're doing it right, people will know that we're good people. They'll just know we're good, because they're just, there's things that, about us that will stand out, It's the best way I can put that. It's very hard to actually say, well, what's a good person look like? But you'll know it.
The opposite of a bad person, right?
Yeah. But you'll know it. If you meet the guy, you're going to know it.
Well, and I would argue, Mike, a step further, that you are 99 times out of 100 not going to be able to know or attribute someone who's living out the tenets of Freemasonry to him being a Freemason. The tenets of Freemasonry are designed to make you a better person, a better citizen, a better husband, father, friend. And Masonry is not a charitable organization, regardless of what some people tell you. But charity, I believe, is a natural extension of being a good person and trying to be a better person. So Freemasonry doesn't have the market share on being a good dude. So, it might be a person who's very involved in his family or his faith, and that's the main driver for him trying to be a better person. Or it could be him living out Freemasonry. But you're not ever going to know what that motivation is. And frankly, I would assume that with a number of us, Freemasonry accentuates other parts of our lives, and they kind of coalesce together as far as a motivating force for good is concerned. So you might have someone who is just a really great person and really helping people out through thick and thin, and that might be a combination of the way he was brought up as as a Mason, but also as a man of faith, and a good family man. I just don't think it's possible to tell, and frankly, I think that's a good thing, because it means we're living out Freemasonry for the right reasons. Because if you're trying to be a good person, you shouldn't be doing it for recognition.
It's interesting. I'm leaning a little bit more towards your side, Jason, when it comes to this.
That's a good side to lean toward.
Yeah, I mean, you would say. As soon as John asked the question, it sounded familiar because I've heard it before, but instead of Mason, good Christian. Back in the day, back in the day when I used to go to church, I faced that question. It's like, how can you tell, a good Christian? And they would, fill their mouth saying, oh, you'll see that he treats his wife with respect, his children with discipline, and blah, 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 blah. No, you go to church and you got a rainbow of all kinds of people, from the most hideous to the most exalted and almost, what do you call this? At the verge of apotheosis.
Apotheosis. Yeah.
And you get that whole spectrum. And the same thing happens in Masonry. Like, we have men who join our fraternity that you couldn't tell them from a guy in a bar. And then you have others who you're like, man, when I grow up, I want to be like this guy. Right? So in my eyes, it's a human condition. It's like you have a variation of different individuals, and some of them search for different paths to enlightenment or growth as individuals. We're fortunate that we've chosen this particular profession because it has a lot of benefits. You can sit in a room with like-minded men who want to become better, regardless of where they come from. They could have any kind of religious or political persuasion, and yet sit down without the friction that comes with some of those denominations, and find common ground and find how to become better. But you got all kinds of men. So I think more importantly than how can one tell if a man is a Mason or is living Freemasonry, I would say it's more important, can you tell that you are living Freemasonry? Like, focus on your own damn ashlar. Mind your own ashlar. Hashtag. We need a shirt for that. Yeah, mind your own ashlar. It's like, we're imperfect. We're on a path to perfection.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go too, is that this isn't about being a perfect person, because we're all human beings. We're all fallible, right? And same
Speak
thing
for yourself.
Well, present company excluded. And same thing, the same conversation is also true for what's a good Christian, right? That we all have sin, right? So you're never going to find a perfect Christian, because that doesn't exist. That being said, there are moral tenets, right, that someone should be aspiring toward, and if someone is not improving themselves in Masonry per se, I would question someone's allegiance. I'll say it, right? That if you get in, get your dues card, and then go start swearing and doing immoral and illegal things,
cutting people off in traffic, that sort of thing.
More than that. I mean,
I know.
Go straight up and say breaking laws and doing very immoral activities. Then are they really living Freemasonry if they're a card carrying member, right? Until they get caught. Most Grand Lodges will have some sort of expulsion clause that says, if you break the law, we've kind of got to take you off the books for PR sake, I guess.
Or at least take your picture down in the lodge.
Yes. I have no comment. And so, Brad Drew brings up in the YouTube chat, so how is that any different than how is someone being a good person? Let's not even say Christian. Let's just say what's the difference between living Freemasonry and being a good person? Because they can both donate to charity. They can both help the elderly and the poor and needy. But the way I would kind of answer that is if you can tell that someone is adhering to some of the moral principles that we were taught. I'm going to go literalist on this and say that if you can directly tie some of the principles that we teach, if you can see that happening, really bad example that's on the spot here is I teach kind of agile development and agile methods to project managers. And people can do agile but not be agile. They can follow these
hybrid agile
meetings. They can follow
hybrid agile.
Oh, that hashtag triggered. They can do the things but not live the tenets. And so it really comes down to, as Elon Musk would say, first principles. Can you break it down? Are they following the core tenets of brotherly love, relief, and truth? Are they following, subduing your passions? Are they following all of these things that we're there to say, if you do nothing else, at least do these things, right? At least keep your obligations. At least hold yourself to a minimum standard of conduct. And I'll be frank, I'll say it on the air. I personally have a problem with brothers who swear like sailors, because it's not holding yourself to a standard that is better than where you are, right? If you are at the bar with the guys, that's one thing. If you are right outside the lodge room, I don't feel comfortable with that. And so is that holding yourself? Are you living Freemasonry at that point, or are you just doing it as a social club, or doing it as every other day, like a random Tuesday?
You're living a different area of Masonry. Sorry.
Sorry, Juan. I'm interrupting everybody tonight.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's okay. On the topic of differentiation, with Brother Brad's comment or question about what's the differentiator between being a good person and being a good Mason, I think some of that is your audience and who you minister to. So Masonry calls out giving special attention and special care and concern to your brothers, their widows, and orphans. So I would say that's a key differentiator. And a good Mason will of course live out his obligations for everyone, but he might pay special attention to his brothers when they're in need, or their widows and orphans when they're in need.
I got to think about that one.
He might.
It's possible. It's possible. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of tonight's show, where we go around and say our final thoughts on shameless plugs.
Hey, can we give a shout out to Joe Martinez for being awesome?
Of course we can. Why would we give a shout out to Joe Martinez? He was just on last week. How much more?
Yeah, but he gave us so many super chats tonight. So much with that. He is awesome.
Super awesome.
Yes.
So thank you, Joe, Brother Joe. And if you want to check out that episode 252 on the High Priest Regalia, it was a really good episode, good research. So thank you, Brother Joe, for that. I think we also had another super chat from S. Bradby. S. Bradby tossed in a couple bucks. Thank you very much. And we appreciate your patronage. Mike, bring us home for your final thoughts and shameless plugs on living Freemasonry.
Well, maybe one day I'll actually be living Freemasonry myself. Still working very hard at it. But one of the places I'm actually going to go to actually learn to do this a little bit better is Camp Masonry. That will be at the end of summer in August. That's August 9th, 10th, and 11th. Anyone interested in going, that's campmasonry.com. That's in Ohio here. It's in the Toledo area. And our own brother Jason Richards will also be speaking at it. That's been confirmed now. So
if you don't want to go to the conferral of the degrees, you can listen to me talk.
That's right. That's right. And RJ too, because RJ will also be there.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
And Dave Bacon as well. I'm looking forward to seeing Dave.
Yes. So again, that's campmasonry.com. Right now, there's still actually, I think Sunday will be the last day for it. The King Solomon's passes are on their early bird pricing of $85. That comes with, your weekend. There's a shirt, I believe. There's a couple other items, but it's the biggest key: unlimited soft drinks and water for the weekend. So
what?
Yeah.
Don't get a high fructose corn syrup buds.
That's right. That's right. Yep. So anyway, again, campmasonry.com.
Very cool. Next up, Juan Sepulveda. Final thoughts, shameless plugs. Go.
All right. I've enjoyed this episode. Of course, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. First of all, I wanted to say thank to Brother Strutt and Brother Jared Stanley from What is a Mason for their generosity. They gave us some super chat and added some funny comments as well. So that was good. But when it comes to, living Freemasonry, I would say it's up to you. Like, it really is up to you. And just like any, most areas of life, you get to choose what kind of experience you're going to have. Like I tell my kids, fun is in here. Fun is it's in your mind. You can have fun in the back of a car, sitting in the back of a car, just looking outside the window, wondering things, or talking with someone, or, you can have fun if you want to have fun. You can be entertained if you want to be entertained. And for you to live Masonry, it's up to you. We live in the age of technology, and like I've said before, in the age of technology, ignorance is a choice. You have access with your little device. You have access to the wisdom of the ages, and it's up to you. Like, you can spend the time just looking through Facebook political fights, or through Instagram, or you can spend some time and read a book. And when you go to lodge, I challenge you, do that. Make sure that, if you have any kind of influence in lodge, even if you're just a new entered apprentice, and this is very important. I remember when I was an entered apprentice and I finally figured out that the stated meeting was, actually, when I became a master, shortly after being initiated, maybe 4 months later, and I realized the stated meeting was not going to have what I expected it would. It wasn't going to have discussions and speeches and like lessons. It was just going to be business. When I realized that, I brought it up to a brother who told me, your demand from your worshipful master what you want to experience in lodge. Press them.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. Demand from your master what you want to experience in lodge.
Until they say, great idea. Go form a committee and do that.
Exactly. Which brings it back full circle. It's up to you.
All right. It's up to you.
But it's true. I mean, find the brothers that you love to chat with, spend time with them, learn from all these brothers. I love in lodge right now. I'm spending a lot of time with, of course, my brothers, and among my officers, or the officers of my lodge, we have Right Worshipful Cunningham. This man is a wealth of knowledge. He's been in Masonry for many years. He was a district deputy Grand Master, and he's full of wisdom. And like, the young man that don't spend time speaking with him are missing out. But anyway, quick to my shameless plug. Very pertinent for tonight's discussion. Applied Freemasonry is a program that began as an experimental program where I wanted to be able to provide Masonic education and practical application of Masonry to brothers who perhaps had difficulty going to lodge, couldn't fit into their schedule, into their time. So this program takes you through some of the lessons that you can find in Masonry and finding practical ways to apply them to your life. And you can do them at your own time. This program has evolved, and the new iteration of this program starts on the 1st, which is a few days away. And you have audio, video, documents, spreadsheets that you can use in real life. How does a 24-inch gauge look in the 21st century? Go to thewindingstairs.com and click on the Apply Freemasonry link, and you'll find out. Thank you, brothers.
Very cool. All right, Jason Richards, final thoughts.
All right. Good episode, guys. Appreciate all of the introspection and the conversation tonight. Living Masonry, shouldn't be difficult, but at the same time, I think it goes against our basest human nature a lot of times. So just take the Kaizen approach, try to be 1% better every day. And, in 100 days, you'll be 100% better and perfect. And no, you won't, but that's okay.
Yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, hope to see you all at some point this year, whether it's at Camp Masonry, Masonicon, Esotericon, or any number of other places. We'll be hanging out. So looking forward to chatting with you all live, face to face, as opposed to over YouTube chat and whatnot. But hope you all have a fantastic week, and we'll see you back here again next week. Back to you, Joe.
Right.
And by Joe, I mean John.
Yes, because I think Joe's super chat's broken because he keeps hitting the super chat button. So thank you, Joe. Again, what's this, 3rd time tonight? So thank you, brethren, for your support. Good show. Really, I always enjoy the open perspectives that we have because we're always looking at this from different angles. And I think what I enjoy most about the hosts and the conversation, those who are active in the YouTube chat and the Facebook groups we're in, is that we really are trying to live Freemasonry. We love the fraternity that we have, and we're trying to get to better ourselves a little bit every day. As Jason said, we're trying to use that Kaizen 1% better every day approach. And we're not going to be perfect at it. No one is. And so all we can do is ask each other to hold ourselves accountable, have an accountability buddy, and try to use the tenets and the instruction we're taught in Freemasonry, along with our religious and moral backgrounds, to provide a solid foundation that we can go out in the world and make the world a better place. With that, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night. So that was a good show, guys.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Hey, Juan, when you said that about your, applied Freemasonry starting on the 1st, I swear my first response to that was April Fools.
You sit and wait.
No. Midnight. Wait a minute. Wait for the button.
I know.
I promise.
Are you there? The link will be below.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey,
awesome.
John, you mentioned Kaizen there at the end.
No, I mentioned Kaizen.
You did too? John just mentioned it.
Yes.
John stole it.
Oh,
he steals everything from me.
We got to stop stealing stuff from other people.
That's why he waits for me to go last right before he does, because he steals all my thoughts.
But I brought it up on a speech recently. And I also brought a quote by Lao Tzu. I think it's Lao Tzu, that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Right.
Oh, wow.
And I could see the people getting it and getting excited about it, and kind of like seeing the concept of Kaizen applied to Lodge in particular. Because I was talking about, the fact that we're losing so many brothers to non-payment of dues, and how can we turn that around, right? So the Kaizen philosophy, like, of course, if there's a problem, you stop and you remove the problem, you fix it, and then you make small increments, progressive increments, right?
Yeah, it's very much the Toyota
Exactly.
factory business model.
Yeah, well, that's what it was born.
Yes.
So what a brother at the end, he came over to me, and I could tell that he was, I can't remember if he was Japanese, or I know he has Asian heritage. So he came up to me and he shook my hand. He's like, brother, you don't know how much that meant to me. I really appreciate that.
Really?
And he actually worked in Toyota.
No way.
So
Really?
so he was familiar with the whole management philosophy and the whole thing. So like he really connected with that part of the message, and
Wow.
Well, it's also like the Gemba philosophy, where the work is done on the floor. It's not done in the management's office.
oh
Well,
wow,
yeah.
that's
So,
powerful, bro.
At work, we've all got the managers that just sit in their offices, and they might troll around the floor like once and then like retreat back. And I've just never been able to do that as a manager myself.
Well, you heard me talk about Agile tonight too.
Yep.
I'm a firm believer that all the same principles that were designed for software, it's really about dealing with people. And so you could apply that same stop and observe, orient, do and act, right? So plan, do, check, act. Get a plan, start executing the plan, check to see how you're doing on the plan, and then do you need to make course corrections? That is true for building software, for flying fighter jets, for raising kids,
right? Bro, relationships.
Oh yeah,
managing a lodge. It's all the same, because it's a philosophy of incremental improvement. And if you truly believe that you can apply incremental improvement by introspection and inspection, right? Stopping, seeing how things are going. Is it going the way I wanted it to? Am I getting the outcomes I want? Not the outputs, because we can get so busy in busy work. Are we getting to the goal of what we want? Then great, keep going. If you're not, like you said, stop. Just stop moving.
Yeah.
And then it'll
full stop, diagnose, pivot.
Yes.
Yes. Don't get into the sunk cost fallacy. That's
nonsense.
No,
not at all.
No. I wish I was, and I feel like I am getting more mindful of that part of actually, because like we all get stuck in a pattern. It's like, this feels normal. Like, this is what I do. Like, why do you do that? Like, why is this how you do it? And like, it could be a minuscule little habit. Like, we've been talking about habits, by the way, John, the whole flossing thing, we got to talk about that. Anyway,
speaking of stopping things, we probably should stop the live show.
Oh
snap!
Yeah.
Did I curse?
No.
I think we were okay.
I love you.
I think I was that sailor you were talking about.
Bye guys.
Bye, Mike. Have a good one.
Oh snap!
See you next week.